Episode 3. We still don't have a name for it. Shout out to Mike Nazaro. Right now, he's the #1 contender with Talkin' Junk podcasts. I'm here with Ryan Gresh, founder, CEO of the Feel Good Lab. Thank you so much for coming. Ryan and I go way back. We met at UConn freshman year, became friends throughout college. I always knew you were going to be an entrepreneur. You have the personality, you have the drive to be an entrepreneur. For a while, he was doing aerospace.
Yes, sir.
And then realized that he had this niche opportunity with his father being a pharmacist, which we're going to go really into detail about because this is a huge passion of mine. But ultimately, you were the perfect person to come on for episode 3 because of the fact that you're living it right now. Like, I'm bored with the fact that I've been grinding nonstop 10 plus years and didn't really share how much grinding goes on until recently. You, on the other hand, you're living the entrepreneur dream right now. You're still in that grinding phase and you're promoting your business at the exact same time, which we were talking about. It's very tough.
I mean, that's funny you put it that way because it's all about perspective. Some days I feel like I'm in hell, but it actually is the dream. Like, I used to think winning would be retiring on the beach with a pina colada. That is petrifying to me now. I love what I do. I love being in the grind. Now, it's time for us to get out of the little bit of a hole we're in and build some momentum and grow sales and all this stuff that comes. But when you give it to me that way, it's kind of like I reflect back in the last 5 years of the journey and say, you know what? You couldn't pay me $1 million to do anything else. And honestly, I feel blessed to be able to do that. And it's really because of my dad that I have this opportunity.
Of course.
Right? But before I get into that, Talking Junk podcast, huge fan. So Naz,
I love
plus
it.
one. But yeah, maybe I'll just share a quick little bit about my story, and I think it'll give some context to the listeners. You know, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but one of my biggest piece of advice for people that want to start a business is to don't feel like you have to just jump in and find this opportunity.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I think it's better for you to go find industries that you like and that you are passionate about and go learn. And I think it's all about solving problems, not about the solution that comes with it. We're going to talk today about where the Feel Good Lab came from, where we're going. The problem's still the same. People need to improve their overall wellness.
Yeah.
The way we're going to do it is significantly different from the way we thought when we started. And because the consumer has the same problem, we just need to listen and understand where they're at. You know, if people aren't buying our product, it's because we're not showing up in their life in the way that they need us to, in the way that where are they today and where do they want to get to? And if we don't listen to the customer and we just think, oh, we got this amazing natural pain relief cream, it really is amazing, but maybe they don't want to hear that, right? And so it's all about pivoting, but I just appreciate you giving some perspective on like me living the dream right now, because when I was up till 2:30 last night in QuickBooks, I didn't feel like it.
Yeah, so you are living the dream in my mind. You know, this is the most exciting part of the journey. Right now, we're at an undisclosed location at my house. You know, part of my journey was the 5th floor walk up in the East Village, sleeping on a pull-out couch, 2 pieces of plywood underneath it. Then Ian, our buddy Ian, a mutual friend, came over, upgraded me to a bunk bed. I still have that picture. Every time I'm feeling bad for myself, I look at that picture and I think to myself, that was like the most exciting part, right?
But think about the progress you were making every day.
Of course.
That's to me the dream. It's that, and because when you're at that point, first of all, your back's against the wall.
Yep.
So you just have this
You have no
unlimited
option.
motivation. You have no option. And so you make so much progress. And what I've learned is it's that progress towards the goal. You're still on the journey, no doubt.
Of course.
It's just that in those early stages, you know, when you're going from 0 to 1, it feels like exponential growth. Now you're going from like 5 to 7, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do we even begin? I think the first thing to talk about is like, I feel like I'm an ideal customer to the Feel Good Lab. I'm obsessed with health. I'm obsessed with getting over my Achilles tendon surgery. Any hack that I can do to speed up the process, I'm trying. And one of my go-to products is CBD products. And originally, even before I started to research really what the Feel Good Lab is, that's what I thought you guys did. I thought you did topical cream. And I am, without shouting out a brand, like, I do the topical cream, I take the CBD drops, I take tablets. I'm obsessed. I think it's one of the greatest products you can have right now. After looking into your company, you're really embarking on a brand new product. This isn't CBD cream. This isn't topical cream. This is a whole new different type of niche in the market. And I just was curious, like, can you talk about it so you can get everyone up to speed on why you're different?
Yeah, and so, the Feel Good Lab, I'm an ex-aerospace engineer, so when we went to college, I was in mechanical engineering. What I do now is completely opposite. But the beauty is I'm actually following in my dad's footsteps. So he's the brains behind what we do. I'm like the rocket fuel, right? He's spent the last 35 years conventional pharmacy, then transitioning to compounding pharmacy because he realized that he was actually hurting people when they were just masking symptoms with these pharmaceuticals. The opioid epidemic was raging in the 90s when I was going to work with him at the pharmacy. Our community was getting sicker. And he's like, something's wrong. We have to find a better way. So he shut the pharmacy down, opened up a compounding pharmacy, which allowed him to customize medicine. He's still making medicine, but it's almost like, imagine the old school, right? Back in the 1900s, pharmacists actually made the medicine. So that means you, Zach, you're a unique individual. I don't need a one-size-fits-all, just count the pills and give it to you. So it really up-leveled his ability to deal with the underlying root causes of what people had. So if you have chronic pain, you don't have a pain problem. Pain is a symptom. You have an out-of-control inflammation problem, oxidative stress, lack of blood flow. There's other root causes there. If we don't address them, we are going to be giving you a Band-Aid for the rest of your life.
For sure.
And I don't need to go too much further to think about the incentive behind that, right? If I need to give you something for the rest of your life, that's a great business model. And I'm just fortunate that I got to see my dad in those early stages and know that's not what the game is about, making money, filling pills. Now transitioning to not only the compounding, but he's actually opened up the nation's first combined functional medicine practice. So the cool thing with that is he has the compounding pharmacy. He has all the tools you could ever imagine from the pharmaceutical industry, and he can even customize them for individual people. What he's finding out is actually pharmaceuticals should be the absolute last resort. If it's an acute care issue, the pharma and the conventional medical model is unbelievable. But when it's a chronic condition, if we go down the path of masking symptoms, we are going to be left devastated. Absolutely. And guess what? It actually almost has nothing to do with products. And where we're transitioning, when I talked about, we launched the Feel Good Lab on the back of a development my dad had in the pharmacy, where he took a topical pain reliever he was making with a really hardcore pharmaceutical, ketamine. And he had this natural base. He started using it on patients without the ketamine to just see if there would be a response. One woman called up in tears because he had no more of that prototype. I'm at dinner 6 years ago, still an engineer in the aerospace industry. He tells that story and I'm like, Dad, are you kidding me? We can bring this out to the world. I was like, this is a healthier, all-natural version of Icy Hot BioFreeze. We ended up getting a patent, FDA approval, so we can make the same claims as them. I thought this thing would take off on day one because we had a better mousetrap. What I learned is we're actually competing against the billion-dollar corporations in a category that might be the oldest category that ever existed, right? Snake oil. So the transition for our brand is also the transition that my dad made. Understanding that if we don't address those root causes, then we're not going to make an impact on the customer. And so we're transitioning. Yes, we've got our great OTC pain relievers, but we're looking more at how do we empower our own body to be healthier. And what we're learning is, supplements are another line that we launched. A really high quality fish oil, vitamin D, an inflammation support, hydration. We'll get into all those. But it's not even those. It's really about your lifestyle and what are you doing on the day-to-day, every single day, that compound. Everything you do is either adding to your health or adding to your demise. There is nothing that stays completely neutral.
I agree.
And there are foods that we eat that we know are bad for us. But guess what? There's foods that we eat that we don't know are bad for us. They would be healthy in, somebody else's body, and they're not healthy in mine. And figuring that out is really where we're at in the journey. So we still have all the products I spoke about, but we're really transitioning. I almost see the future of being a media company, where we're just helping people to implement these lifestyle changes, and the products they buy from us are the last resort because they're not able to make the changes on their own.
Yeah, I mean, this couldn't be any more relevant in my life right now. I think in my 20s, tore my ACL, was prescribed a ton of pain medication, masked it, pushed through, got better, right? Probably not the same way I'm doing in my 30s. And I remember being in the hospital and they're like, point to the number of pain you're at. I didn't want any painkillers. I wanted to figure out everything I could do that wasn't a pill. And that's really why I thought, you'd be the perfect guest on here, because I know people are going to get injured. It's inevitable, especially when you're pushing it at the level that you and I are pushing it at, both professionally, personally. There's less time in the day that, people aren't prioritizing sleep.
Right.
Our culture is all about just keep grinding. Don't even worry about it. You're going to, you'll sleep when you're dead. So one thing that stood out to me, and obviously there's like 20 topics there that you just went over that I am interested in, but one thing that stood out to me is just you talking about that moment where the light went off. Coming up in an entrepreneur family, my father, he owned an accounting firm. He always thought I was going to go into accounting. My brother started the junk removal company. He always thought I would join him on this journey with the junk luggers. And then creating my own niche, right? Now I own a franchise, and I do all the accounting, finance, and budgeting. So I'm also making my dad happy in that way, right? So can you just like walk us through what does it mean to work with your family?
Silver lining to what's going on in the world in the past 3 years, family is by far the most important thing to me, and it's not even close. You don't get to choose your family, and so I'm really blessed that I've got the support of my dad. I'm the oldest of 5, so I have all my siblings, and I have this vision that the entire family will be working at the Feel Good Lab one day. I mean, that's the vision that I want to build, and because they all bring a different skill to the table. That's what's really cool. So my dad isn't like me. We are very similar in certain areas, but he wants to work one-on-one with individuals and research all night long. If you have a condition that doctors have told you there's no hope, that's his favorite thing to work on, because everything has hope. And he just is a relentless pursuer of understanding the science. Me, I want to get this out to the world.
Right.
And so we balance each other out really well. Not to say it's not hard. It is really hard. And my brother is a pharmacist also, so he's been joining the team in the past year. And so it's super rewarding. It definitely has unique challenges because we get together as a family all the time, and like it's hard to balance that.
Of course. How do you talk about normal life when all you guys are thinking in your brain is about the Feel Good Lab?
Right. But we love it, and so I think it's just been easy, and I think everybody has their own path. It's our upbringing and our genetics and whatnot, and for me, I feel very fulfilled because I feel like I'm definitely following my purpose. I know my dad is, I know my brother is, and I finally feel like I found my purpose. And I think the universe brings things into your life and kind of reminds you of that. When times get tough, like last night, staying up all night, struggling with QuickBooks, I got the biggest email of the companies. I will now, or I'll call your dad. I don't need you to do it.
Yeah, call my dad.
But I literally had like the worst night ever last night, and then got the biggest email in company history this morning. And so it's just, to me, that was the universe saying like, hey, don't get discouraged. Like, this is the right path that you're on, but keep going. It's all about, that persistence.
Yeah, so you had a terrible night followed by an amazing morning. Like, how do you keep that mindset, right? Like, what are you doing when you know that it feels like you're just not getting any luck? And, like, what's going through your brain to keep you pushing?
Well, I'm blessed because I'm probably the biggest optimist you'll ever meet. So, like, a stupid example. We got sued a few years back, and we ended up settling because there was some justification behind it, but it was BS. It was what we believe a competitor that got a class action lawsuit started about a claim that doesn't even make sense, because we had an ingredient that was organic certified, but not natural certified. So organic is beyond natural, and it's because it's a preservative, so you have to have some synthetic properties to get a proper preservative. It's the healthiest preservative you could ever have. Well, we said all natural in some of our marketing. And so we had to settle this class action lawsuit. Well, that hurt. Getting that in the mail, getting served this multi-page lawsuit in the middle of a lot of momentum was like, oh my God. But then immediately I go to, thank God this happened now. Well, we're at the bottom. Imagine if we were in every Target, Walmart, CVS in the world, and then this happens. So I just always see the silver lining. And I think that it's really hard for us to judge something in the moment. When we die, we can look back and see what the ripple effect from certain things is. But until then, we have no idea if a good thing turns out bad or a bad thing turns out good. And so it's really just about accepting what's coming at you and being like, all right, next thing up, let's go.
Yeah, lawsuits are scary, but when you are growing at the speed that you're growing, at the speed of junk luggers growing, it's inevitable. You're not going to be able to control everything.
Right.
This is why you have insurance. This is why you prepare, and you want to be as smart as possible, but people are going to try to knock you down along the way. And that attitude that you're talking about is the reason you're going to be successful, and you are successful now with your venture because of the fact that most people would give up when it starts getting hard, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to keep pushing through.
Yep, 100%.
I think you have a really interesting thing going on with UConn right now in the state of Connecticut. You want to just fill people in on what's happening?
Yeah, so, I'm a big believer in this term that one of my mentors coined called the Connecticut Comeback. I grew up my whole life. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to UConn. I only applied to UConn. And I grew up in this small bubble. And as I graduated college and learned a little bit about the world, I'm like, get me out of this place. What am I doing here? And, in the first decade of my career, I traveled quite a bit. When we started the business, we were going to move to California. We wanted to get out of here. We're like, we need to be in a place that's a mecca for startups, et cetera, et cetera. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that we would have made.
Wow.
What happened was I got introduced to somebody at the DECD in Connecticut, the Department of Economic Community Development, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they're responsible for building businesses here in Connecticut. And they taught me that Connecticut is not the bad rap that it gets.
Yeah.
People really crap on Connecticut. It's right in between Boston and New York. We have some of the best highly educated talent in the world. Our summers, our spring, our fall, even our winters are amazing. We have 4 full seasons. And I always thought that Connecticut was, all of these bad things that we hear about. Yeah, high taxes, stuff like that. What I actually have flipped to believe is that Connecticut has so much untapped potential.
I agree.
And so now I'm following in David, my mentor's footsteps, and I'm all about the Connecticut Comeback. I want to build our business here. I want to be part of building a new ecosystem. And the beauty is I'm a small fish. But if I go to California, I'm a small fish in a big pond. Nobody's going to care about me.
Of course.
In Connecticut, it's unbelievable the type of meetings I'm able to get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree. I think, man, Connecticut just needs more entrepreneurs. It needs more people driving businesses. And I think it's a great opportunity. And that was one of the things that I'm the most proud of about you, is how proud you are to be part of Connecticut. And, I agree. I think it's going to be a huge comeback.
The cool thing too is there's so many resources here that I didn't know about. So I met with the DECD. They told me about 4 different things that 3 of them have come to fruition for the business and have been game changing. And I think that one of my roles now is to try to get the word out and to find young entrepreneurs that might be in Boston, might be in New York, and show them what those resources look like if they're interested in moving here to Connecticut. But you don't know what you don't know. And that's one of the best things that I've learned about entrepreneurship. It's like, if we're not always kind of pushing that boundary, we get stuck inside of a box that's not really truthful.
Love it. Oh man, that's great. And how are you working with UConn?
Yeah, so UConn is our alma mater.
Right.
I'm working with UConn in a couple ways. They invested in the company first and foremost, which is super cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, so they're an investor. They're a part owner.
Wow.
But my favorite way to work with UConn is giving back. I mentor entrepreneurs there. I was able to go back a couple weeks ago and present to a really cool class. So because of this whole name, image, likeness thing, which is NIL. So think about college athletes having the opportunity to sell their name, image, likeness, and make money. In the recruiting world, this is going to be a huge tool.
Yeah.
And Connecticut's trying to get out in front of that, UConn specifically, and offering special courses that are blending athletes with entrepreneurs. And so I got to go speak to one of these classes and tell my story and work with them on kind of what we're all seeing collaboratively in the marketplace that we can add value and how we can kind of leverage these new opportunities. So giving back and working with young entrepreneurs is my passion. Like, I can't wait for one day the Feel Good Lab to be a success where I can do that full time.
And you can have your logo on the UConn Huskies jerseys.
Dude, my goal in life is to have, any UConn fans out there, the seats all surrounding, right? Right now it's Select Physical Therapy, who's a customer of ours. I love Select. So, don't take offense to this, but those seats are going to be teal one day, I promise you.
Sick. I love that. Yeah. So I think the next thing that we should move over to is like, why your product, okay? And one thing that I think is really cool when you listen to your podcast, which you're unbelievable at, listening to your dad speak about his passions and you really leading the direction and the movement is how you're talking about not just your product. I love that part, right? One of the biggest things that you bring up, and hopefully we could just hit those topics quickly, is inflammation, specifically having to do with food, and your dad being able to do some sort of food panel that will show you which type of food causes inflammation.
Yep. So I'm going to go in order, kind of where we started, what products, second tier, and then third tier. First thing was my dad had developed this amazing natural pain cream. So what was so game-changing about it is you look at most of the products on the market, they've got about 10 to 15% menthol. Menthol is an active ingredient and it makes us an OTC drug. We have 1.25% menthol. That's the FDA's minimum effective dose. What's important is menthol, it's called the gate theory of pain. Say you have pain in your shoulder and I stab you in the toe, right? All of a sudden you don't feel that shoulder pain because the body isn't capable of sending multiple signals at once. Well, the way it works with menthol is it creates a cold sensation on your skin, so it sends a cold signal. My theory is like, say you're in Antarctica and you break your leg and you're stuck. What's going to kill you, right? It's going to be the freezing. So the body prioritizes the temperature sensation and it just sends those signals instead of pain. Well, what is that doing? It's masking symptoms, okay? It's important to take the edge off. We do need to look at the symptoms and try to get those under control, but 99 or 98.75% of our formula are natural ingredients that serve a purpose. And those purposes are penetrating the skin, which is what my dad is an expert in his compounding pharmacy.
So sick.
Then reducing inflammation, ingredients like turmeric, glucosamine, arnica, devil's claw, calendula, boswellia, amazing natural ingredients that can actually affect the root cause. And then improve blood flow is the last one. So we have some other ingredients in there that help, fresh blood cells get in there. When you deliver these ingredients topically, most people are familiar with turmeric or curcumin they take as an anti-inflammatory. And it's an amazing, potent anti-inflammatory systemically. We'll talk about why we have that product coming out as well. But when you can deliver these ingredients right to the site, not going through the GI tract, think about the opioid epidemic. Think about the number one reason for emergency room visits in the United States is GI bleeds due to overuse of NSAIDs. NSAIDs are ibuprofen, Advil, Tylenol. It's an epidemic because we have an epidemic in pain, and then we have an epidemic in the solutions that we're currently using to treat pain. And when you deliver that medicine every day orally, you're going to build up a tolerance and the side effects are going to get catastrophic. So that's who we are. We're all about functional medicine. Do no harm, first and foremost. Do no harm. We're here to help. We're not about side effects. We're not about introducing things to the body that the body doesn't know how to deal with and is going to cause more ripple effects down the line. So that's step one, is nothing harmful. Step two is using ingredients that address the root cause. And so our first products were on the back of this formulation my dad had developed, and it was really getting amazing results. We decided to really look at, okay, what is he doing in his pharmacy day to day? He's like our R&D lab. He's working with individual patients, thousands of them at this point, and he's learning actually data-driven what's working and what's not. And what we found is he really had a protocol with people in chronic pain. To be honest, people with chronic conditions. You could kind of replace our natural pain cream and get rid of that, and the same protocol is what he's using to help people no matter what their chronic conditions are. Crohn's disease, GI issues, chronic fatigue, all these different things. There's almost always an out-of-control inflammation component. And what he found is it's because of what we eat, the toxins that were being sprayed all over the world, on the grass, on our foods, etc. The toxic burden, our body has never dealt with anything like this in the history of humanity. So the body is spending a lot of energy fighting the inflammation, fighting the toxins, etc., and it's not spending the energy being healthy and in homeostasis. Exactly. So where we went in phase two is we launched a line of supplements that the exact same formulas and doses that he was getting great results with in the pharmacy. And the first two were curcumin, which is from the turmeric root. It's one of the most potent anti-inflammatories in the world. Really great.
I take it right now.
Amazing. And then a high-quality fish oil. So in our current American diet, I think, and again, he's the scientist, I remember some of the numbers, so don't quote me on this, but it's something like 20 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3s is the ratio we get in our traditional American diet. We need that to be 1 to 1.
Wow.
And the omega-3s are really important in just the functioning of the cells, like at the core level. And so if we don't have that proper balance at the cellular level, it just is a ripple effect that causes these imbalances throughout the rest of the body.
Can you get enough fish oil from your diet, or do you have to supplement it?
You can. It's really hard.
Right.
And, there's not many people that do. If you live in Alaska, you
And
might
you're
be
eating.
lucky.
Yeah. So it's amazing, right? I feel like since the pandemic happened, this is all I focus on. Supplements. I take vitamin D. I take turmeric. I take fish oil. For someone that's just listening, right? Maybe they don't take anything right now.
Yeah.
What would you recommend based upon what you've seen in terms of supplements?
So, super loaded question. I'm going to answer it two ways. First of all,
Thank you.
every single person is unique. There is no one-size-fits-all
It's true.
solution.
Yep.
Second of all, I'm not a doctor. But there are two things that I have seen that I think would make a significant impact on most people. The first one, and I didn't know this until recently, hydration. Now, most people think hydration is drinking water. Actually, sometimes drinking too much water can be dehydrating.
Which I was telling you I think is my issue.
Yeah, and like I was having these issues, I'd be really stressed out, I'd be working too much, I'd get some twitches in my eye, I'd get some twitches in my arm.
Yep.
Well, after we launched our hydration product, I started taking it every day. Obviously, I got to be our number one consumer, so I literally won't drink water without this stuff anymore.
Wow.
And I haven't had that issue in months. Now, this is anecdotal. It doesn't mean that the same is going to happen to somebody else. But I believe that we are chronically dehydrated.
Yeah.
Even if you do drink enough water, I think that if you're not getting the proper electrolytes, the trace minerals, and it doesn't take that much. It's actually, our product is really cheap. You get 40 servings for $18. So there's a lot of products out there. Some of them have too much sugar in my opinion.
Right.
I like ours because it's super simple. It's literally the sea salt, the trace minerals, and some of the electrolytes. You just put a few squirts in your water and off you go. But that's been really game changing for me. And I think whether you're an athlete, you're in chronic pain, no matter what you're dealing with, making sure your hydration levels are adequate is going to make an impact, and you're going to feel it. You're going to sleep better. You're going to feel better.
Oh, for sure.
Brain fog.
Right.
I mean, if you look at some of the studies out there that look at how our brains function and how electrolytes play a role in that, it's pretty amazing. And my dad's taught me this. It's never one thing, but everything works in conjunction. So it's not one thing, but sometimes you can change one thing and there's a ripple effect in a positive way. So hydration, probably number one. The second is, especially if you're in a four-season area like Connecticut, vitamin D. We don't produce enough vitamin D unless we get proper sun exposure. And that means without sunscreen. So if you're putting sunscreen on, you're really not getting the proper sun exposure. And depending on your genetics and whatnot, that might not be allowable for you if you have a predisposition to some skin cancers. So supplementing with vitamin D becomes really important in those instances. Now, my dad will always say, you should get checked. So that's where working with him or working through us, we have functional medicine practitioners and homeopathic doctors that we'd recommend that are going to check your levels. And then they're going to give you the right doses depending on you.
And then recheck them.
And then recheck them to make sure you're making an impact. The second thing with vitamin D is you want to make sure you have the right source. So we use a D3. And you want to make sure it's the right dose. But then more important than that, you want to make sure that it's got accompanying vitamin K. And we have vitamin K1 and K2 in ours. And the reason is vitamin D isn't really very effective without the K. The K almost shows it where to go. It's like in cannabis, you talk about CBD, there's a thing called the entourage effect. When you use the whole plant of the cannabis, not just the CBD, the THC, the CBDA, the CBG, these other cannabinoids, there's a compounding effect where 1 + 1 = more than 2.
Oh, I see.
Because the body is very complex, but when you're using these natural substances, it actually typically knows what to do with them. And oftentimes it's not as simple as like, oh, just increase your vitamin D. Well, if you do that without K, you're not going to get the absorption. Right?
Wow. That's a lot of knowledge right there. I'm impressed. One other thing that you guys talk a lot about is just listening to your body, right? Not pushing it. I was telling you before we even started this, I tore my Achilles because I just wasn't listening. I was constantly pushing. I was just trying to fit a workout in my entrepreneur life, wasn't stretching, wasn't sleeping well, right? And then that compound effect, I'm playing basketball with my brother, step back, tear my Achilles. So, what does that mean to you when you hear this? Because I'm sure you talk to a ton of people that have gone through surgeries, injuries. What is the number one underlying thing that you're seeing in terms of a theme?
Well, I think that the number one theme is that people are really starting to take responsibility for their overall health. And to me, the last 3 years I've really put a focus on that.
Yeah.
Pre-existing conditions, it's almost like you would expect everybody to have some sort of pre-existing condition. In fact, I would bet you the odds are that almost everybody does have some sort of pre-existing
If you count
condition.
vitamin D and all those deficiencies, without a doubt,
Totally.
everyone has something.
And we don't need to overcomplicate it. I think it starts with sleep.
Yep.
It starts with diet,
Yep.
nutrition. One of the biggest changes that I've made, I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, and I know my dad talks a lot about how there's a difference between genders when it comes to this, but intermittent fasting. I eat way less now. I feel 10 times better. That's just my body,
Yeah.
right? But I found that we get convinced that we're supposed to eat 3 times a day.
Right.
And the theory that I had, this is just anecdotal, it was just the theory that came into my head, is like, if we're digesting for 8 hours after we eat, and I'm eating, not digesting. And then
Right.
I did some research. I said, what does it mean to digest? Well, your body's sending so much energy to your gut in order to process this food and really, make out of it what it needs, that you're never in a state where your body's not sending that energy. And imagine where that energy can go when it's going elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that intermittent fasting has been really beneficial to me. But
I also think, not to interrupt you,
No,
but
go
I
for
also
it.
think it's huge for inflammation. That's really why I'm doing it. It's less about the health aspect. And obviously, I'm feeling healthier doing it. I'm feeling more clear-headed. I'm finishing up my intermittent fast now to have this discussion with you so I can feel the benefits of intermittent fasting, but it's also the inflammation. When I'm not eating, I'm not causing inflammation, and I can literally feel my Achilles like subsiding and getting that relief, which I'm sure the benefits of that also.
And this is a perfect transition for me to kind of go into phase 3 of the Feel Good Lab and where we're going. Because so ultimately, I think that our diet, I think we are what we eat.
Yep.
And I think that we get tricked a little bit. I like McDonald's like the rest of us, I try not to have it very often. However, there's a lot of people that have that multiple times a week. And if you think we are what we eat, well, look at the labs that these foods come from. I mean, they're not really anything more than a genetically engineered, in my opinion, I call it a drug because it has a physical reaction where it builds up this addiction to the sensations you get
Of course.
from eating the food. And I think it's hard to take a step back. I'm blessed because I had such bad stomach issues that it was super easy for me. I was really motivated to make the change.
You don't want to be in pain anymore.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that don't have the same symptoms that I did,
Right.
but are still having the negative consequences of it. And so what we're launching, it's really on the back of some of the work my dad has done with a lab up in Massachusetts that has patented a really special test called a food inflammation test. So a lot of people might be familiar with a food sensitivity test. They're similar, but I want to get into the differences because it's really important. Food sensitivity is important as well. If you can understand what foods are causing what's called an IgG reaction. So IgE reaction is a food allergy. This isn't an allergy. Allergy is much different. A food sensitivity means multiple days later. An allergy is going to be almost immediate. A sensitivity means your body is going to be causing this negative reaction for quite a long time. Oftentimes it can be weeks after you ingest a food, depending on how severe it is to you. So what this test looks at is the IgG. That's basically in a food sensitivity test. The IgG is what they're looking at. The problem is there's a lot of false positives. So say you do a test and it comes back with 30 foods for you to cut out. It's really hard.
How are you going to cut out?
How are
30?
you going to cut those out?
Right.
The nice thing about our test is it looks at the IgG plus a complement protein called C3D, I believe. Dr. Dorvell developed it out of Massachusetts. And what happens when you look at that complement protein, first of all, you get double the signal, so the accuracy is much higher because now you're looking at 2 signals, not just the IgG. So that means less false positives. The other thing is that complement protein causes an inflammatory response in the body that's 10 to 1,000 times greater.
Wow.
So we're really targeting the foods that are wreaking the most havoc. And it's because you'll do the test and maybe only get 1 to 5 that are between a 5 or a 3 inflammation level. Basically, the test gives you back a range. So some will be 0, some will be 1, 2, 3 plus. You can really target the ones that are doing the most damage.
Right.
And one of the things I've learned is most people, including me, know how to be healthier. Implementing it is way harder.
Yeah.
And sticking with it's even harder.
Consistency,
The
right.
self-sabotage, right? So it's really hard to eat healthy on the go as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Do you know any, maybe in New York City, but around here, do you know any fast food restaurants that are really healthy?
None.
No.
And that's why food prep and eating in your own house.
Yeah.
Even if it's like in New York City, it's actually more expensive to go to the grocery store and cook your own food than ordering fast food.
It's crazy to me. But just to finish, the food inflammation test. So we've partnered with this lab, and it'll be launching actually by the end of the week. I'll hold myself to it. By the end of the week, it'll be live on the website to purchase. And we're really excited because we have a trademark. It's called Fight Pain with Wellness. Now, we eventually want to be a wellness company and not just a pain relief company. But when we look at people in chronic pain, if we can improve their overall wellness, we can really fight pain.
Yeah.
If we were going to mask symptoms with menthol or opioids or NSAIDs, that's not fighting pain with wellness. In fact, oftentimes that's doing more damage. So this, to me, is going to be the keystone of everything we do. Because if you can understand, Zach, the foods that you're eating, honestly, I guarantee if you did the test, there's going to be 1 or 2 foods that are healthy to most people that in your body are causing out of control inflammation. And if you can make those changes, it's not just going to help your Achilles. It's not just going to help your sports performance. It's going to help everything.
Yeah, I love it. So let's pivot from all this topics and just health and wellness, and because I think honestly, like all these things you've talked about, obviously your products will do it, but also most of these things you're giving advice on, they're free. It just requires will and consistency. Let's move over to your business. You have a ton of experience now raising money, raising capital, dealing with the product industry, having to have a shit ton of inventory, which costs a lot of money. That's usually what puts most product companies out of business, is having to have, if all of a sudden you get a deal with, I know you have a lot of deals right now, but let's just use one of them. What's your biggest one right now? Should I not even say?
No, the one I'm most excited about is QVC.
So QVC, right? If you go on QVC, you could sell hundreds of thousands of products. You need to have that in inventory before you even go on the show, right? That costs a lot of money. What's the experience like going out there selling not only for your family, but also your future?
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm surprised you know so much about these challenges because people had told me them, but until I went through it myself, I was like, oh my God, this is what they mean. And just to put it like in layman's terms, say we get a deal with QVC, 100,000 units, it costs me, $500,000. I need to buy that inventory months before we get on air, and many, many, many months before we sell it and I get paid.
Yeah.
So it becomes cash flow. Cash flow is king. You know that, right? It's literally the lifeblood of your business is your cash flow. So being in a consumer goods business, now I get why people, when I would go to these investment pitches and they laugh, they're like, I'm not investing in this. And I'd be like, what do you mean? We have an amazing product. We have a great brand. The marketplace is moving in this direction of natural, less pills. I said, no, you're going to need to spend so much money to get to where you want to go that I'm not going to foot the bill. And so what I found is our investor pool is probably 2% of angel investors in the market, because 100% of angel investors love computer SaaS businesses. You do all the upfront work in the code and you scale it overnight to infinity, right? And I get it. So one of my passions is, now that I've learned these hard lessons, I can't wait to succeed one day and go back and find the entrepreneurs that are in my shoes. Yeah. And one, give them the capital and the resources they need to get ahead of this, because it's an inevitable problem. Doesn't mean we don't need consumer goods products. We need better consumer goods products. But it's just an inevitable part of the journey. And luckily we're at a stage right now where we're a little bit ahead of that. But every time you grow, guess what you need more of?
Money.
More money. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah. So just so everyone knows, like 5% of all businesses make it to $1 million. And cash is king. Like, I couldn't agree with you more, especially during the pandemic, when all of a sudden I went from doing hundreds of jobs a week to doing none. And people need to get paid. Rent needs to get paid. And that was a really important lesson for me to learn, that not only do I need a rainy day fund, but I need to not only invest in myself, but invest in Junk Lugger's future. And the only way to really do that is through cash. So, so thinking about that, right? Thinking about those struggles, thinking about what you want to do in the future and give back, like what's the next steps for the Feel Good Lab?
Yeah. Well, I think, we're launching this new vision, right? This food inflammation test. We're going in a whole new direction. And the feedback I'm getting so far it's small. You know, we're talking a small pool of people. It's been out of this world. There hasn't been a person I haven't talked to that's been interested in this for either themselves or their loved ones. And I think I see a massive groundswell of younger people all the way up the whole age demographic, but I really look at the trends in the younger people because they're the trendsetters and the early adopters. And, you know, just a little anecdotal point. I'm at UConn speaking. I don't think any of these college students that don't have much money are interested in a food inflammation test. I wasn't when I was at UConn. Were you?
No.
Not even close,
Definitely
right?
not.
We were interested in the party at
thing.
Carriage House that
Yeah,
night.
that was the last thing I was worried about.
And 7 students out of 20 come up to me after the class and said, hey, when that's ready, I'd like to buy it.
Wow.
I'm like, what? So, you know, I think I talked about this earlier. It's about the problem you're solving, not the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the solutions end up being, awesome. We know that there's a demand in the marketplace to be a resource for people to live healthier, better lives. And I'm blessed that the name of our business is the Feel Good Lab. So whatever that looks like, we are going to continue on that journey to help people feel good.
It's like the most badass name. I love it. If you could have any billboard out there that you could drive by every single day, hopefully not in traffic, what would it say?
Love this question, by the way.
I stole from Tim Ferriss. I'm sorry, Tim Ferriss.
I was listening to him on the way down here.
Mm-hmm.
I would figure out the better way to say this in a cuter marketing. And Mark Twain has this quote I recite it all the time. I'm sorry this letter is so long. I didn't have enough time. I find in marketing, it's all about getting things into as few words as possible. But ultimately, what I think that our mission is here, my mission, is giving people hope. So the billboard would say, there is hope. Because I'm a believer that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so in our demographic, right, 100 million people in the United States alone with chronic pain. 2/3 of them don't think anything will ever work. Nothing. They're coming at this with a sense of, I'm hopeless. And talk about the placebo all you want. People are like, oh my God, don't talk about the placebo. You're a pain relief company. The placebo is the most repeatable tool that anybody has in their tool belt.
Absolutely.
Bedside manner of a doctor matters. The way that they tell you, if they say, yo, Zach, you're never going to walk again, you're going to be messed up.
A doctor actually told me that. He said, I'll never be able to walk comfortably again. And ever since that day, I'm determined to figure out a way to, I'm going to get back to running. I'm going to get back to all that.
Absolutely you are.
But I'm that 1/3. Is that 2/3 that just say to themselves, you know what? This is it. This is the rest of my life.
Yeah.
There's nothing I'm going to be able to do. I'm not going to be able to lose weight. I'm not going to be able to exercise again. I just need to be okay with this, managing this pain. And I think that's what you have going for you guys. You're not doing what the general public tells you to do. You're not trying to mask the pain.
Right.
And I think it's really huge. And I think it's admirable. You know, I think this is what the world needs more of.
Appreciate that.
Is there any questions you want to ask me?
A ton. You know, first of all, I'm going to throw it back on you for a second. I've been following your journey since day one when you were opening this up in New York City. And first of all, super proud of you. I can't wait to come spend a day with you and see behind the scenes of literally one of the most opposite businesses I could ever imagine, right? We're going from like premium consumer healthcare to junk removal. And at the same time, I bet you there are so many synergies and overlaps.
You wouldn't even believe it.
I know. So, you know, one question that I'll ask you right here, in your growth, what's been your biggest challenge over the last 5 years?
Mindset.
Yeah, like your own mindset or the team's mindset?
So what I've realized is the way that I act will dictate my team's actions. And I think people are getting really a lot more comfortable talking about this nowadays. For a while, you know, I think part of the reason that I'm loving this podcast is because you get to hear like the realness. And that's why long format works. I know a lot of people are like, just cut it down to 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But for me, what I'm realizing is everyone sees people through social media.
Yep.
And they only see the positives. But that's not reality, right? Like things are happening all day, every day that dictate my emotions. And how I act based upon what those experiences are is really going to dictate my success, whether it's personally or professionally. So, you know, for the last 5 years, I've basically been focusing on my mindset, creating these systems of flow, which I'm sure I'm just going to keep talking about over and over again these because I know you know what I'm talking about. It's those 1-2 hours where you can put all that other shit aside and just focus on the stuff that's holding you back.
Yep.
If you know you have a pitch coming up and you're waiting to the last night to get that pitch together, you're not going to be as successful as you know that 2 hours during the day where you really kill it.
Prepare, baby.
So for me, flow is huge. Mindset's huge. You know, I'm doing the craziest shit I can possibly think of. When you came in, you passed by my ice barrel. I'm sitting in an ice bath.
Huge believer in that. Sauna, too. Sauna's one of my guilty pleasures.
Yeah. So everyone loves sauna, right? No one loves the ice bath. And
No.
that's why I think I gravitate towards it, because I love torturing myself. You know, because then I leave and I'm like, if I can sit in an ice bath for 3 minutes, I can do anything today.
Have you looked at Wim Hof? Literally, if I could have
we read the same, we listen to the same things and
I
read the same things.
Love Wim Hof.
Same.
Anybody listening out there that hasn't checked out Wim, check him out. He is going to inspire you beyond belief. This guy lives it every day, and he's proven what the body is actually capable of.
Yeah, and when I first started, like the first objection I normally hear is like, I can't do it for 10 seconds. So I'm like, do it for 10 seconds. Next day, the day after, do it for 20 seconds. You know, and through that repetition, through the consistency, you realize every day I go in there, I'm like, I don't want to do 3 minutes. But every day I get out there, I'm like, I did 3 minutes again. I cannot believe I torture myself like this. But like, this is just one example.
What's probably the hardest part of your day? Your day just gets easier.
It's just one example of what mindset can do. Sleeping. You know, you talked about sleeping. I used to say I'm going to sleep when I'm dead. I actually believed I was going to die young, so I'll sleep when I die. Now, my goal is to be technology off, 9 o'clock, sleeping by 10 o'clock, try to sleep until 6 o'clock. Like all my friends come up to me still, what is it like waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning? I don't do it anymore because it was killing me. And there's so many entrepreneurs out there that are just telling you, keep grinding. Wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, work and do whatever you got to do. That's great for a year, 2 years, 10 years. I just did it for 10 years. And I got a shit ton of medical issues because of that. And, you know, I think if there's anything I could teach people, it's consistency, right? Yeah. You talked about it. It's huge. And my goal is I'm not going to do everything all at once, but I'm going to try to do as many small things every single day to create that positive action over all of the negative actions that I create throughout my day.
We have this quote that I repeat every single day. My team does too. It's from Confucius. A rich person wants 10,000 things, but a sick person only wants one. And so inevitably, we're all going to know what it feels like to be sick, right? But when you think about that quote, what it tells me is like, holy cow, is there anything more important in the world than our health?
Absolutely not.
But you only really appreciate it once you're sick.
Always.
And so, unfortunately, sometimes it takes running like that for 10 years to understand, wow, if I'm not proactive, if I don't work out, if I don't eat healthy, if I'm not taking care of my mental space, you know, it's inevitable. You will get sick.
Yeah.
We're all going to die. That's not scary to me. What's scary to me is being sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. You just nailed it on the head. I think it's, you know, people need to be more focused on it. And it's not just health, it's not just food, it's everything. Right. It's how you can live your day in a way that makes you happier. And you know, you only get one shot with your body. And how you treat it during your 20s when we were in college, like we were talking about, we would have never talked about this.
Never.
Right?
But kids now are.
Of course. And that's awesome to me because I was watching the entrepreneurs that were telling me don't sleep. Mm-hmm. You know, just if you cared enough, like one of the famous stories is Beyonce, she was taping something and she didn't sleep or eat for days. Now I would look at that, I'm like, well, think about how much better she could have been if she ate well and slept well for those days. She would have performed at a peak performance. Obviously,
we keep talking about sleep, right? Here, just a crazy statistic, and the numbers are off slightly, but it gives you the perspective. You can go about 30 days without eating food. You can go a couple days without drinking water. You can go less days without sleeping. It's illegal to do these types of studies for sleep deprivation because so many people died.
Yep.
Think about, you never really think about that. You think, oh, I need to eat. Oh, I'm starving. I need to eat. You don't need to eat.
Yeah, and I think I get people all the time that say to me, like, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. My mind is restless. And to me, I think about it and I say to myself, like, it's a talent just like anything else. I wasn't a good sleeper until I started focusing on sleep. People don't want to put down their cell phones.
Read.
Right. People don't want to be bored for 1 second.
Right.
And I think, you might not be good at it right away, but 5 years down the road, you'll be better at sleeping. And if you don't tackle it now, you're going to be that old man who talks about never sleeping.
What are some of your tricks?
Obviously, Wim Hof breathing is huge.
Yep.
Box breathing.
Yep.
4 seconds in, 4 seconds holding, 6 seconds out. I heard Mike Newman, shout out to Mike Newman. He said this is how Marines sleep in crazy situations. And I was like, if Marines are using this to sleep in Afghanistan during war, this should calm down my brain enough for me to be able to sleep at night. Because I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is that restless brain. You feel like you're never doing enough, right? And when do you start thinking of things? When you finally put down the phone and you start thinking and having those thoughts. A lot of times you're probably up at night because you're not making the change that will ultimately save you. If you think about what's actually bothering you and you spend a couple nights trying to figure it out and you make those changes, you'll sleep better.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. I have a little hack. Tim Ferriss gave it to me. It's this thing called a chili pad. It's not very cheap, but I cannot sleep without it now. It's almost like I'm so addicted.
Cold?
Yeah. So what it does, it's a pad that lays over the bed. So I have my side, my wife has her side. She likes it much warmer than I do. I put it as cold as it goes.
Same.
And it just sucks the temperature right out of you. So you can be under like really warm covers, but the chili pad is really getting your temperature down. And I have an Oura ring also, which tracks my temperature and sleep and stuff. And I actually am sleeping really, really well right now, but it's because I put a lot of emphasis on it. And it just comes down to that. If you focus, I believe in vision boards and all these sort of woo-woo things, but I've seen the success of them.
Of course.
I had my dream car that was on my vision board for 7 years before I could nearly afford it. It was just like a strike of chance where this guy saw my passion about this amazing car and he gave it to me for way cheaper than he should have ever sold it for.
Amazing.
I believe it was me looking at it for every single day as the background on my phone, the background on my computer, the vision board on my wall that kind of made that come to reality. But what you focus on, whatever your mind can believe it can achieve is what I think.
I love it. How do people find you? What is the best way to reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, so you can check us out at The Feel Good Lab, thefeelgoodlab.com, The Feel Good Lab on social. But honestly, I like connecting with people one-on-one, so I'd love it if you reached out to me directly. Gresh Air is my Instagram. My email is ryan@thefeelgoodlab.com. And so if anybody has questions, comments, just wants to jam, please reach out. I love connecting with people.
Shout out to Ryan from the Feel Good Lab for coming down to our undisclosed location in Connecticut. This was huge. You have been such an inspiration to me, and I've just been following you on social media. It's not like we've been hanging out. I've been in New York, you've been in Connecticut, but big things are about to happen for you and your family, and I think ultimately, just like everyone hearing how much hustle it takes just to get to this point and where you guys are going. He's got this amazing products, he's got these amazing supplements, and he's already focusing on what's next. It's so inspiring to everyone out there, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming today.
Likewise, brother. So much love and respect. And talking junk.
Talking junk. Tell us what you think about that. And shout out to Roger for always making us look good and sound good. So that concludes episode 3. Thank you guys so much. You're so good on camera. It's ridiculous.
That was fun.
I could learn so much from you.